Evening, everyone. On behalf of the American Geographical Society, welcome to the beginning of the school year webinar, AP Human Geography and the Course and Exam Description 101. Preparing to talk with you tonight, I looked up the rules for schools regarding COVID protection. For as many times I looked up the school district, there was a new and different protocol. Once again, teachers are being forced to deal on the front lines with a problem they did not cause and solutions for the problem being forced on them by politicians who have no idea of what they are doing. Of course, this is nothing new for you. You've had to maneuver this obstacle course since you started teaching. If anyone can handle the ambiguity and the senselessness of this, it's you. Unfortunately, there isn't much AGS can do to help with the COVID situation, except empathize. But we do hope we can be of assistance and service to you over the next year in a significant way. A couple of years ago, AGS undertook a serious consideration of what we stood for and how we wanted to lead geography and geospatial science in a fast-changing environment. We knew we had limited resources, so we had to focus and choose activities and initiatives that we could do best. There was a very strong feeling on the AGS Council, our board of directors, that we needed to focus a significant amount of time on education. But geographical education is a broad area, everything from kindergarten through postgraduate research, and we didn't have the resources to do it all. So after very thoughtful discussions, we decided to focus on AP Human Geography, and within the large parameters of APHG, we decided to focus on you, the teachers. We've made some progress in our work with you over the past couple of years. Now is the time to ramp things up. Despite COVID, we want to work closely with you, even more closely this coming year, and provide you with resources to help you prepare our students to enter a world where it is essential to be geographically savvy. My colleague, Courtney Clark, who you will come to know well, is going to explain to you how you can interact with us. I know you want to get straight into today's webinar, so I want to end my comments with a piece of advice my former boss gave to me many years ago that I think is so representative of the APHG teachers I have come to know. In my younger days, when I thought I had the answer to everything, he took me aside one day and said, "John, look, if you have a nickel and I have a nickel, and we exchange nickels, and we both have a nickel. But if you have an idea and I have an idea, and we exchange ideas, and we both now have two ideas." That lesson has stuck with me throughout my career. And I have to tell you, after working with APHG teachers for a few years now, I have never seen a group of professionals more interested in helping each other and exchanging ideas. I know many of you on the webinar tonight are new to APHG. You are so lucky because you have new colleagues, including Dr. Lisa Benton-Short and her 18 panel tonight, who have a lot to share with you and will help you shine in your classrooms. We hope the AGS materials help, but really, your new colleagues here are your #1 resource. Good luck to all of you for a very successful school year. And now, it is a pleasure for me to introduce Ms. Courtney Clark, who will briefly report to you our overview for the coming year. Courtney?
Thank you so much, John, for your wonderful remarks. And thank you so much to our attendees for joining us this evening. My name is Courtney Clark, and I am manager of sponsored projects for the American Geographical Society. And what that means is I have the pleasure of managing our geography educator initiative and dedicating my time to providing support and resources to APHG teachers such as yourself. So I'm going to give you just a very brief introduction to some of those resources before I pass things over to our first presenter, chief reader for the AP Human Geography exam, Dr. Lisa Benton-Short. Next slide, please, James. And yeah, we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So our support is focused across 5 different key categories. First, we are dedicated to offering you learning resources, which include curriculum, email newsletters, and daily geo. different webinars and events such as this, and a database that we're excited to announce soon to you. We also offer GeoBoost, which is our grants program for APHG teachers. We have a fantastic teacher advisory board who supports us and is really our sounding board for everything that we do. We are dedicated to introducing teachers and students alike to the fantastic world of OpenStreetMap and open mapping. And usually in non-COVID years, we are also thrilled to host a Teacher Fellows program. And now I'll give a few more details about each of these opportunities. Next slide. So first, I'm really excited to announce to you all this opportunity to apply for our GeoBoost grant program. GeoBoost is a program where we offer grants to APHG teachers who apply for a clearly defined geography or geospatial related activity or resource to enhance their students' learning. This year, we're really excited to announce that we'll be providing 60 to 70 teachers with $300 grants each to purchase a geo-related resource, experience, or activity to their students. The application is incredibly easy. It should hopefully take you no more than 5 minutes, and your odds of being selected are very high. And the link to learn more about GeoBoost and apply are in the chat. Next slide, James, please. So I have pictured on the screen some really great examples of past GeoBoost purchases. If you go to that web page to learn more about the program, you'll see an interactive map where you can view past projects and activities that teachers have used their funds for if you want inspiration for your own application. These include the purchase of a mini drone, a field trip for students to visit the Chinese American Museum in Los Angeles and Olvera Street, different digital book and film libraries to expose students to a wide variety of perspectives, and even hydro garden supplies to help students better understand food security and agriculture. Next slide. As I mentioned, we also offer you a variety of learning resources and tools for use in your classroom. So the first is Daily Geo. It's our short digital news blast where we highlight the ubiquitous role of geography and headline stories. We deliver this to your inbox every day before 11 a.m. and we know that many teachers like to use this in the classroom with their students. We also have started developing a variety of post-AP exam lesson and project plans, which include a focus on careers in geography and GIS, as well as ethical dilemmas within the use of location data. We host special webinars and events, such as the one you're attending tonight. So keep an eye out for those across the school year. And then, as I mentioned, pretty soon we'll be announcing to you a new database that we are creating full of book, movie, article, podcast, and other recommendations. It is for APHG teachers by APHG teachers. Next slide. I'm also thrilled to introduce you to our teacher advisory board. Two of our presenters tonight are also members of the board. These are experienced and distinguished APHG teachers and former teachers. They advise us on our strategy and objectives and assist in reviewing the GeoBoost applications and selecting our winners. They participate in these special events and webinars and generally keep us on track and make sure everything we're offering is relevant to you. Next slide. I'm also excited to introduce you, or excuse me, to invite you to our Geography 2050 Symposium. Every year we host an annual fall symposium focused on thinking about and bringing together the top minds around the future of geography. And this year's theme is Towards a More Equitable Future. So we have multiple ways for you to get involved. First, we highly recommend that you register to attend the event. It will be an online, open, virtual conference, free for you to attend. And we're especially excited about the special session that we'll be hosting on November 20th for APHG teachers. We also encourage you to submit a lightning talk by September 30th. This is a 5-minute talk that is forward-looking and tells a geographic story related to equity. You're able to submit a lightning talk in 2 different ways. One, you could talk about the general themes of the conference, or new this year, we're also asking teachers to submit talks on educational themes. So sharing with your fellow teachers how you teach about social justice, inequity, and how to strive for equity within your APHG classes. Next slide. My top recommendations, if you want to get involved and learn more from AGS, would be to apply for a GeoBoost grant. Again, all these links are in the chat. Subscribe to our daily Geo email, and also subscribe to our mailing list, which includes access to a quarterly newsletter where we share announcements about all of these opportunities and more. And that will be the best way for you to make sure you have access to everything we offer. You're always very welcome to reach out to me. I've listed my email address, and I'm thrilled to hopefully hear from you in the future. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll pass things over to Dr. Lisa Benton-Short.
Thank you, Courtney, so much. It's wonderful to be here with you all this evening, and a big thank you to AGS for all you're doing to help AP Human Geography teachers, learn some of the content, expand, and be inspired to turn around and inspire their students. So we are so excited to have you here this evening because we know you're embarking on this wonderful journey called Teaching AP Human Geography. And the purpose of tonight is for some of the most amazing AP Human Geography teachers with an incredible depth of knowledge and experience to share with you some of their suggestions on how to get going, because one of the things we know is that this is a course that we all love, and that's why we're here this evening, to share that enthusiasm with you. But it may feel a little daunting right now, and that's okay. If this is your first or second year teaching, we know it takes time to learn the content, and then also to understand how best to teach your students. So next slide, James. So I'm joined tonight by 5 amazing AP Human Geography teachers. This is a team of, and A stands for awesome. We have Allison, Cecil, Laura Kmetz, Celeste, Reynolds, Kelly Swanson, and Dan Whalen. And all of these high school teachers have done an amazing amount of work and come up with creative ways to engage students. They have experienced tremendous success with engaging their students in the world of AP Human Geography and doing very well to really encourage their students to perform at the highest level. And that has been something that has really benefited the entire process of AP Human Geography. So I'll be introducing a little bit first about the exam for those of you who are new to this. I thought I would just kind of do a very brief overview of AP Human Geography. So next slide, James. So, if you're wondering, because we know that many of you out there who are teaching this for the first or second time may not have had geography at the college level, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, most universities tend not to have geography departments, although where they do, it thrives, and it's a very essential topic. So what this course really reflects is the typical way in which a first or second year student in college will experience an introduction to human geography course at the college level. For those of you that aren't familiar with human geography or geography at all, you may be thinking, well, how is AP Human Geography different from some of the other social sciences, like a history or a psychology? And the biggest way that I can kind of imagine letting you know how we are different is to understand that geographers think about place. We think about the relationship between people and place, and part of that entails a level of spatial thinking. And one of our major tools that we use to understand space and spatial thinking is that we visualize spatial distribution, we visualize spatial patterns and processes as well as data into things like maps, charts, tables, and satellite images. So I put up this map of the world by coronavirus cases, just to kind of give you a sense of what I mean by how we think spatially. So as a geographer, I approach looking at an image like this in a very different way than other social scientists would. You know, part of what I'm looking at is places that don't have a whole lot of cases, and then there are places that do. And as a geographer, I want to know, why are there so few cases of coronavirus in, say, North Africa or even in sub-Saharan Africa, but we see the United States and Brazil and India with tremendously significant numbers. And it's this unevenness of the world around us which fascinates geographers. So when we think about spatial distribution and patterns and processes, one of the things that underlies a geographer's understanding of the world is that it's inherently uneven, that there will be places where things are more pronounced than others. And so the geographic perspective is really about researching and understanding where things are happening, why they're happening where they're happening, and why it matters in the 21st century. So next slide, please, James. So welcome to AP Human Geography. This is one of the fastest growing AP exams in College Board's selection of AP. We started off in 2001 with only 3,272 exams. In 2019, we hit about 233,000. And we're looking to see some growth on the 2022 exam. It's kind of been going up. Last year, we kind of plateaued, but I don't count 2021 because it was a very strange year for all of us. Next slide. And here is a map. Now, this is really old and very dated, but I thought, you know, I would highlight that notion of uneven distribution as a key theme in geography. And this is the number of AP Human Geography exams as of 2014. You can see there are some states where there are a tremendous number of students taking the exam. For example, Florida, Georgia, Texas. Then there are some states where there isn't quite as much AP Human Geography activity. My goal as the chief reader is to encourage growth in AP Human Geography because I think it's such a great subject, and I really hope that some of those states where the numbers are lower, we see some growth because it is really a great course to teach. And I think that you'll all appreciate how you really come to love this course. Next slide, James. So one of the things I would definitely encourage all of you out there is you probably already have selected your resources for your students. You probably selected the one textbook. Maybe you inherited it, maybe you didn't have much of a choice. But for you as a teacher, the one thing I would stress is to use as many resources as you can to help create your lessons, your class activities, and the kind of content you cover. Really, there is no one single textbook that captures everything that is on the course exam design. And so you really want to synthesize the various books that are out there because they all do a partial job of covering what is essential in AP Human Geography. So please use a diverse set of resources to pull your information from. You might also think about including some supplementary readings for your students or for yourself. And there's a variety now of incredible short little videos from the AP Daily that were created last year to many different kinds of videos on YouTube. Just make sure that if you are going to use those videos, that you see them directly connecting to the course and exam description that we'll talk about in just a couple of minutes. So next slide. And for you, again, resources for your journey. Many of you are starting off teaching this course without perhaps a a big depth of knowledge in human geography. And so the other thing that you can certainly do is learn geography yourself outside of the textbooks, but into the realm of geographic research. There are many books out there that will give you a real appreciation for some of the most important themes and concepts and trends that are underway. Some of them are in books. Some of them are in academic journals like the Geographic Review, which is an AGS publication, or the Journal of Geography, which comes from NCGE. These are great resources where you have content as well as pedagogy articles. And then I also encourage you to think about attending conferences where you can learn more about the content as well as how to teach, right? So those are the two big puzzles that you're having to put together. And NCGE is a wonderful annual conference where you have a lot of AP Human Geography teachers attend and share activities, share pedagogy, and also just general content. And every year AP has the AP annual conference. This year it will be virtual, but we'll have a little breakout room for AP Human Geography, and I'll be there talking more about the exam. But that certainly, in normal years, that's a conference that also will host a lot of panels and sessions on content for the course. And so next slide, James, because I think I'm going to turn it now over to Allison Cecil, who's going to talk to us a little bit about understanding the CED. Take it over, Allison.
All right, thank you so much, Lisa. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the conceptual design that went into the course and exam description. I'm Allison Cecil, and as you can see, I'm a human geography teacher in Louisville, Kentucky, where I've had the privilege of teaching this course since pretty early on. So I've been teaching it right around 20 years now. We can go to the next slide, please, James. So probably the one thing is you keep hearing about, and you'll hear all of tonight about the CED. So CED stands for Course and Exam Description. And if you're new to the course especially, you might wonder, well, what's the purpose of it? The purpose of it is it's really a contract between you as a teacher, teaching students in the AP Human Geography classrooms, and the College Board. And it's a contract regarding what will be on the exam. Now that might seem a little odd unless you have a little bit of perspective on the history of not just the AP Human Geography course, but AP courses in general. And that is that there used to be this infamous outline. So that, for instance, when talking about culture, you would have Unit 3 culture, and then A, language, B, religion, and those words, and that's it. So then what is actually going to be assessed on language? What is going to be assessed on religion? Obviously, those are huge topics. And so people were going into all kinds of different directions, and rightly so. So the exam description is an effort to make sure that it is transparent about what students will be expected to know and do on the exam. Next slide, please, James. So this is the AP Human Geography course and exam description. Some of you might have a printed copy of it. I find, quite honestly, the PDF more useful. I encourage you, if you have not already downloaded it, saved it to your desktop, to do so. And you can see the effective date on there. So it's been effective for a couple of years, but as Lisa mentioned, and as you are all well aware, the last couple of years have been anything but normal. Another thing that I wanted to emphasize is if you're new to the course, you might have experienced the double-edged sword of AP Human Geography already. So the beautiful thing about AP Human Geography is that you can link almost anything to this course. The curse of AP Human Geography is you can link almost anything to this course. That can certainly be overwhelming. What should you link to it? Well, pay attention to the course and exam description. So sometimes teachers will say, I'm against teaching to the test. However, as other presenters, specifically Laura will talk about, you're not teaching just content, you're teaching skills. You should be teaching students how to think like a geographer. So we're not teaching students specific factoids as much as how to approach geography as a discipline. So that ends up being super important. And this is your go-to resource. So I have the good fortune of being one of the administrators on the AP Human Geography Teachers Facebook group. Many of you are members of that group as well. We share a lot. That's one of the beautiful things about our community is we are so active and so giving. However, even if it's a really experienced teacher out there, if they're sharing a great idea, check it against the course and exam description. Does it actually help my students in terms of what they're supposed to know and be able to do? If not, you might want to reevaluate it. Now, of course, you are the teacher in charge, and sometimes as teachers, because of our students and their situation and their experiences, we might choose to teach something that's not in the CED. That is perfectly okay, but that needs to be a conscious decision. And so what I don't want to have happen is for you to be like, oh, so-and-so is an experienced teacher. I assume, or this was posted on the Facebook group, I assume that this helps illustrate this concept. It may not. It's a good practice to delve into this regardless. James, if you could please flip to the next slide. So as we go through the CED, and we're going to give you some tips on utilizing the course and exam description with planning your instruction and with your students. I want to emphasize, again, anything, if you just do keywords, can fit into this class. And so is this geographic? Many of us were trained as history teachers. Most of us teach under a blanket social studies certification, meaning that our state has said, hey, you're certified to teach anything under the social studies, which is very broad. We may not be experts in this. However, what we come to find out is that most people, once they start teaching this course, they love it. In a sense, they become geo-evangelists. And we expect that even if you don't feel that way right now, that will be the case for you as well. One of the things I love about teaching this course is while, of course, all social studies classes do have relevancy for our students, it's not always an obvious relevancy. Sometimes we have to work hard to show our students how it's relevant. With this course, you shouldn't have to work hard to do that. Instead, it's about paying attention to what's around us. A popular term is windshield geography. And students, by taking this, should have a much better understanding of global and local patterns and processes. Celeste later on is going to talk about case studies. So the question becomes, what do I use to help illustrate some of these points with my students? What do I have them explore? Well, as she's going to talk about, it's good to use things like case studies, but just be selective. And again, always refer back to the course and exam description. One more slide, please, James. So I want you to understand, and you'll hear more about this coming up, but a little bit about the design of the course and exam description and the format of it. So if you're familiar of understanding my design, UBD, it takes a backwards sort of planning approach to things. And that's the method that was used to create the course and exam. And so the idea there is we look at, desired results. So from like the AP exam. And then we look at, okay, what will that look like in terms of what we have students be able to do in the meantime? And then from that, we plan experiences and instruction. So these enduring understandings, learning objectives, and essential knowledge statements work together to have us hopefully have those desired results with our students. So while we can teach the course content in a little bit different ways, it should all be framed within those EUs, LOs, and EKs, as they're frequently referred to. Something that's sometimes tempting is to just go to the essential knowledge column that's very specific and say, That's what I need to teach. Well, in what context? That's what the LO and the EU is going to tell me. So I encourage you to kind of think about that as you go along. As you get overwhelmed with things, which certainly happens with all of us, realize, okay, there's a lot out there, but I'm going to continue to ground myself in that course and exam description. So if we could go to the next slide. Daniel is going to tell you a little bit more about the course and exam description by showing you a few of these topic pages and how he uses not only the CED, but also AP Classroom within his class. Daniel?
All right, good evening, everybody. Can you see me? All right. I'm really glad to be here. I thought you did a great job setting this up, and we're going to go straight on to the next slide. So the topic pages that you'll find in the CED on pages 30 and 31 have an explanation of everything that you will see on an individual topic page. And the topic pages for lesson planning are really where the rubber meets the road. So you have suggested skills, enduring understandings. If you look in the bottom left on that graphic, you can see those are the big ideas that connect everything back to the discipline. And then the topic page drills further down to that essential knowledge and learning objectives. So when it's time to write a formal lesson plan, maybe during an observation, or just as you're doing your planning for the day, you can lean on the essential knowledge and the learning objective to really spell out what do your students need to know by the time that the bell rings. Take a look at the next slide, please. All right, so now we see the actual layout of the topic page. We have the topic at the top, the suggested skill in the top left, available resources. These are links that you can click on. They're provided by College Board. And then, of course, to the right, you have the learning objective and the essential knowledge. Now, if you're in a situation where you're a new teacher, either new to the content, or maybe you're new to the profession. There's a teacher shortage around the country, so expecting a lot of new people to be out there tonight. You might be learning this content as you go, and that's okay. You can do it. This course is one that you're going to fall in love with, and everything that is in the CED is going to help you make it to that exam day. So when I started my planning this year, I looked at my calendar at the test date. My students start on the Wednesday after Labor Day. So I saved 6 days for assessment through the course of the year. I budgeted out 6 days for review before the exam to review those important concepts. And I saved 3 days at the beginning of the year just to establish my classroom norms. And I found that I have 55 days left to teach the 68 objectives in the CED. And I would tell you it's okay if along the way you double up a couple objectives. It's going to be all right. So figure out how many objectives you're going to be teaching in each lesson. Use the CED, find the synergy between the topics. And even with the information that's on the topic page, you might still be in a position where you're not exactly sure what it is that you need to teach, but there's an excellent resource that's going to help you with that. Let's take a look at the next slide, please. AP Classroom. So you should have access to this once your course is authorized. And if your course isn't authorized, you want to take care of that as quickly as possible. If you look at the top as part of the question bank, you can filter out questions by unit and topic. You can filter it by skill and category. And this way you can track student data in between units. And also you can zero in on how the essential knowledge and the learning objectives will be tested in the actual exam environment. So examining the questions that pair with the skill and category, the unit and the topic is another huge advantage to help you figure out what it is that you need to put in your lesson. If you take a look in between where it says question and question type, you're going to see a little icon that has a light bulb. So if you click on that light bulb, what it does is it connects you to an AP daily video. And College Board has these amazing videos that you can use for your own direct instruction, for your own reteaching, or for your own professional development. If you need a quick tutorial on what it is that you need to get across when you're teaching a specific topic or trying to show mastery over a skill. Next slide. All right, so we're going to switch now to Laura. Welcome.
Hey, hi, everybody. Good evening. We're so glad you're here. And we're so glad to have you and share this fantastic, just amazing course. I've been teaching it since 2014. And I kind of feel your pain as a new teacher. I'm really remembering what it's like to be new this year because I'm a new AP US history teacher. And so I cannot wait to feel competent and confident in my abilities in there like I do in AP Human, but I kind of feel like AP Human will just always have my heart. So next slide, please, James. I'm going to talk to you about the core skills specifically and kind of connecting the essential knowledge to the skills. And so I chose the topic, the demographic transition model. You probably are going to be coming upon this pretty soon. So the essential knowledge is what they must know in order to be able to do whatever they're asked to do on the exam. And so those are the core skills. So there are the 5 skill categories. Depending on what other AP classes you're familiar with, there's some overlap in terms of kind of how to conceptualize these. But the scale analysis to me is and the spatial relationship skill too, those are very geographic, very unique to geography. And so they're just worth pointing out for that reason. Next slide, please, James. Okay, so I have reproduced the core skills again. This is page 14 is where the core skills are in your CED. If this is a little blurry, and so you just want to take a look at those. But I wanted to point out the task verbs. The task verbs, are defined on page 159 in the CED, which I've reproduced there. So you can see that those are the ones that are used in the core skills, and those are used in the multiple choice and free response questions on the exam. So it's really important that students work with those verbs and the meanings, very particular meanings of the verbs. Like now would really not be too soon to be introducing the meanings of the verbs and to practice using them in class. Next slide, please. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to point out to you about the skills is that they do progressively the proficient. So students who are at an emerging level are learning geography, but in order to get them to be able to earn like a 3 or higher on the exam, they need to be performing at the proficient and the advanced. So as you get to the E's and then the couple of skills that have F's, those would be considered advanced. And Lisa is going to talk to you about the 2 special explain the degree and looking at explaining limitations and strengths, because those are super advanced skills, and she'll tell you a little bit more about those in a few minutes. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so this is, again, so what students must know is over there in that topic card. So what I did is I pulled this question from the CED. There's like a sample test at the back. And so if you have not taken that test yet yourself, I encourage you to do that. I did that for AP US History, and even though I took APHG in high school, that was a really, really long time ago, and the test was different. So I took the practice test and I was like, all right, I can do this. So I picked this question too, because it's one that adults who can read graphs, who know absolutely nothing about the demographic transition model, can probably get this one right, which is really why it's considered emerging, because they're like reading a graph here. But as long as they can read and they read the graph carefully and they don't get tripped up by, I don't know what the DTM is, then next slide, please. Okay, so how can you use skills in class? I'm really big on, I really like to give teachers practical things. And so if you just keep looking back at the skill categories, when you're thinking about when you're thinking about planning, and then when you're actually thinking about teaching, maybe consider writing one emerging, one proficient, and one possibly advanced question to use in each lesson. There are key questions in pages 144 through 151. Use those sample activities, for guidance, they're good. And then the instructional activities really build student skill proficiency. So take a look at those. I've looked at them and I think they're really good suggestions. I've just been teaching this for so long that I have my own, my own activities, but the things that are suggested are similar to the things that many of us do in the classroom. So I did want to give you some sources for stimuli. The Facebook group is wonderful, but it's so overwhelming because there's so much. And so I realized that these are kind of these are the sites that I just go to a lot. They're kind of one-stop shops. Our World in Data has questions that that the stimuli are used, on the exam, at least the digital questions that I saw from last year that are in AP Classroom. The Council on Foreign Relations has a lot of really, really good stuff, including some educational curriculum type stuff at world101.cfr.org, excuse me. Population Reference Bureau is another great one. And then for pictures, so for photographs, Getty Images is a great one. And then United Nations just has like a ton of stuff that's related to everything in our course. So next slide, please, James. Okay, then these are the key questions that I was talking about. So I have made these posters. These posters have been shared in the Facebook group. So hopefully, I know there's a lot there. So hopefully if they're called like skills posters, but I'm the only Kmetz in the group if you search KMETZ. So I have these posters and my students are used to like looking at these questions and trying to apply these questions to whatever stimulus that we might be working with in class. And it's just a classroom friendly way to be considering those questions and building the skills. So I just wanted you to see them all like on one page. And then we have Celeste Reynolds next.
Thanks, Laura. Hello, everyone. It's great to have you all here, and I'm excited that you have joined our AP Human Geography family. I will say this is the best class to teach, and you're going to inspire so many students. So welcome. Tonight, I'm going to talk about case studies a little bit. James, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So case studies are a great way to help students learn beyond basic definitions of key concepts and identify. Case studies kind of help students start to apply the concepts and the models and the information that they're learning about and apply them to the real world, and kind of say, okay, what am I learning from the CED, and then can they actually apply it into the real world? So it's one of the things that's kind of tricky about this course is that a lot of students are used to memorizing, regurgitating facts and concepts, but they have a difficult time actually applying those concepts and models. And so that's where these case studies can come in and provide students a way for them to do they really understand what this concept is? Can they apply it? Can they talk about the consequences, the implications of maybe these models being used? So those are things that are very important. Can students connect concepts? Like, are there 4 or 5 concepts that they can connect? And that's kind of one of the things, themes that that's the beauty of this course. Like Allison was saying, there's a beauty of it, but then there's also a curse. It all connects, but then how does it connect? And making sure students know how to make those connections. So when you're looking at case studies, you really want to do this because it's helping deepen that understanding of course content. And in addition, we're talking about building those geographic skills. So those are kind of the two things you want to look for when you're thinking about case studies and why case studies are so important. Next slide, please. So in there, and when what is it there you need to consider? And, I wish there was like a magic, hey, here's a list of case studies for you to do, but everybody teaches things differently. Everybody's students understand different concepts, different models. And so you kind of have to see where your students are at. There's so many available resources out there, and I know it can be so overwhelming. I think that that's something that I know as a new teacher, I was overwhelmed, and I had to kind of pick and choose what was I going to use, what was I going to focus on. And that's kind of really important to kind of think about, but it's important to think about, is this a good fit for your class? Is this what you need to do? So things to take into consideration is, does this case study expand or enhance what I see in the CED? Really look at that CED. I know that in the past, I've been teaching the course for a while as well. And looking at the new CED, I noticed that some of the case studies that I was using prior to the new CED are not really as important as they were. They're not really there. So I kind of said, even though I love doing that case study, it's probably not a good fit and at a good use of time. Like Dan was saying, you have so many learning objectives that you need to cover. I don't have the time to do that. I need to really make sure that I'm teaching what my students need to know to be successful for the exam. So, the things is will it help my students learn more about concepts that they're learning about from the CED? Does this case study provide my students with a real world application? And I ask myself those questions. Another one, the two is, developing geographic skills. You need to think about, ask like, what geographic skills are my students going to learn if I'm using this case study? Are there skills that they are going to need, and are they going to be applying that throughout the entire course? And will it help students critically analyze the maps and the graphs and the images and the charts that I need them to be able to do in order for them to be successful? So these are kinds of questions you need to ask yourself when you're looking at case studies. And then the other thing is, does this case study help my students make connections between concepts? Because a lot of times you'll start to see as you're teaching what you're teaching in population, it also connects to culture, which also connects to agriculture, which also connects to urban geography. And so these all kind of, they all kind of blend together. And so are the students able to make those connections? So that's kind of another thing that you're looking for in these case studies, that you're choosing to do so. And then another great tip is, what they're learning in this case study, will it provide knowledge for students to be able to transfer to other areas or ideas within the CED? So, we can't teach every place in the world, but we can teach about a case study in one part of the world in a certain region, and maybe on the exam, they might have to apply that information that they learned in that case study to another region of the world. And so that's really important that when you're picking a case study, you're able to do that. And for example, I have in here on the slide, as you can see, I have it linked. There's in AP Classroom, there is a scale case study. I use this every year because scale, you use it all year. And students need to learn how geographers use scale in different contexts. And this one is great because it does a real deep dive into scale. It also provides a real world application. And it allows your students to apply what they learned about in the reading and apply it into either a group discussion or however you want to structure it. And it's a skill. I mean, it's content, but it's also skill that they're going to apply when they hit population, when they're going to learn about culture. And so that's something that you need to really look at. When you're in the CED, you'll see this pop up, this scale. It says AP Classroom Resource, and it will list the scale case study. And if you go through the CED, it will be there several times in different units, meaning, hey, what students would learn in this case study is going to be used in this part of political geography or in agriculture in geography. So that's really important that you pay attention. There's also another case study in AP Classroom on globalization and urban geography. So make sure you check those out. Now, there are other case studies you can use, but just try to make sure that you're asking the right questions. Is it enhancing the CED, developing geographic skills, and providing knowledge that can be transferred to other parts of the course? Next slide, please, James. So things to kind of be cautious of. Unfortunately, there's no magical answer. There's no magical list of case studies to use. And that's really important. And I think that's where it becomes very overwhelming. A lot of us teach current events. I know I teach current events, and it's important not to go too overboard about using current events in the classroom, because oftentimes the exam is being made 2 or 3 years prior to what when the students are taking it. And so sometimes like what's happening right now is not going to be seen on the exam. But try to think of contemporary kind of big themes that apply to what they're learning in the content and trying to apply it to the real world. The other thing too is a lot of us probably don't have the most recent textbooks. And that's important to kind of point out that sometimes some of the older textbooks might not have case studies that are relevant to the CED. That's also, goes along with what you see Allison was talking about in the Facebook page. Some teachers that have been teaching it for a long time say, oh, I do this case study and I love this and I've been doing it for years. Well, it might be a great case study and the students love it and the teachers loves it, but it might not be hitting a lot of concepts that are in the current CED, and it might not be really covering a lot of geographic skills. So just be careful that you're not spending too much time, if you're really on a tight schedule, on these kinds of case studies that aren't really like focusing towards the CED. Next. So I kind of wanted to wrap this up and I know we're throwing a lot of information at you. And so I always like to break things into 1, 2, 3. And first, think about this. Hey, if you're thinking about a case study, the first thing you should ask, hey, is this in the CED? Is the concepts and the models that I need to cover, is this case study covering that? 2, is it also going to enhance and help develop and build those geographic skills for my students that they need to know that are in the CED? And 3, is it going to provide a real world application for them to gain a deeper understanding of what they need to do so that they can make connections? So think about those things: content, geographic skills, and real world application, and bring that all together and you got one great, strong case study. Thanks, everyone. And I'll turn this over now to Dr. Kelly Swanson.
Hi, welcome. My name is Kelly Swanson. I teach AP Human Geography at Johnson Senior High School in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I also teach the Introduction to Geography course at Metropolitan State University. I absolutely love this course. But first, I want to quickly say that it's an honor to be a part of this all-star group of panelists who are presenting tonight. I also want to thank AGS for putting on this presentation for both new and experienced teachers, because I think that we can all benefit from what we're hearing tonight. And then I want to commend you for teaching this course. This class has actually, I have a passion for AP Human Geography. It's like McDonald's. I'm loving it. All right. And so whether you feel like you have to teach this class, which does happen, or whether you get to teach this class, which I hope happens, you are part of a geographic revolution in education, which is exciting to be a part of. So thank you for the work that you're doing for students really around the country and around the world. We get to talk about the test. I like big tests, and I cannot lie. You didn't think you were going to hear Sir Mix-a-Lot tonight, but you do. So James, can we go to the next slide? All right. As of today, when this presentation is being given, we know that COVID has a tendency to change some of our plans. The plan from the College Board is to offer this test in 2022 in paper and pencil format. So the last 2 years, it has been in an electronic format as well as paper and pencil in some cases in 2021. So it will be given at your local school, and it will be the exact same format as what has existed prior to this. So we're going to see 50% of the test be multiple choice, and the other 50% including free response questions. And you're going to need to use some stimuli when you are giving your students these practice tests. James, can we move forward? So let's talk about the multiple choice section. 30 to 45% of all of the multiple choice questions are going to have some type of stimuli or stimulus associated with it. So plan on that. Some type of maps, chart, graph. And by the way, maps spelled backwards is spam, which is produced right here in Minnesota. Everything's geography, and geography is everything. The multiple choice section will be 60 questions, and the students will have 60 minutes to answer that. So some of these are in sets. So a set type of question, I've given you an example of it right there on the bottom of this screen, is you're going to have some type of chart, map, graph, and then you're going to have usually 2 or 3 questions associated that relate to that stimulus. And so practice that as well as students kind of go through that. And as they go through that, they're going to be much more comfortable come May when they are taking that test. So now let's start talking about the free response section. The free response question, James, can we move forward, is actually going to consist of 3 questions. And on this part, they're going to have about 75 minutes for this. So I tell my students to plan on about 5 minutes of simply organizing how they're going to answer this, and then to use about 20 minutes to actually write out their response on that. So question number 1 is going to have no stimuli associated with it or stimulus associated with it, but it usually will have some type of context statement. So this is an example of a question number 1 with the context statement related to dairy farming on this question. Question number 2, James, can we move forward? Here is an example of question number 2 from the 2021 exam, one of the forms, and again, these are located on AP Central for you to work with your students in your classroom as well. So this one had a chart, and then again, it asked students to kind of work with the chart throughout the different prompts. All of these prompts are, I shouldn't say all, but most of these questions are going to have 7 parts. Some of the questions will have 6 parts. So if it has 6 parts, it's going to be an A through F type of format. If it has 7 parts, it's going to be an A through G format, with each one of those prompts, each verb equating to a point. So all of your FRQs are going to equal 7 points on this type of free response question. So if you'll notice on this question, you're going to see the 5 verbs, which are outlined in the course and exam description for you. You're going to see the identify, and usually, again, that's going to be some type of stimulus associated with it. A define verb, describe, explain, and then the last verb is going to be compare. So this question here simply walks through the describe and then explain, describe and explain type of verbs. Have your students practice that, because that tells them how to answer that question as they walk through and organize their answer. And then question number 3, James, can we go to the last slide? Here we go. You're going to actually have 2 different stimuli associated with this. And again, all of these questions are going to relate back to those stimuli. So have your students make sure that they're looking at those stimuli related to that on how to answer those questions. So on this one, you can see that in part C, there actually is a defined verb in this, but that has to relate to the special economic zones that we're seeing there on that map associated with China. So have your students practice this if you can on each of your unit tests. There are a lot of examples out there for you to use on this, and it is a great example. Have your students start working on this, and again, using that A, B, C, all the way to G type of format for your students to kind of get them to organize their thoughts as they do go through this. So again, I hope you have as much fun as we do teaching this class, because geography is so spatial to us. All right, we'll move on. So I look forward to your questions coming up here, but it is a great, great class to teach.
All right, thank you so much, Kelly. James, can we go to the next slide? All right, I'm going to wrap up very quickly with some of the thoughts that I have about some of the ways that I see students could use your attention on helping them improve. So Kelly's been talking about the structure of the exam. I just wanted to point out some great news, and that is 53% of students scored a 3 or higher on the 2021 exam. That means more than half the students that took the exam scored a 3. And for universities that accept a 3, that means they received college credit for anything 3 or higher. So that's terrific news. We're actually trending in the right direction. But I did want to share with you some ways that I see opportunities for you to really assist your students to perform better. And I know it's a long way off to think about the exam in May, but one of the things that I have learned is that many of these are things that you want your students to be practicing, you know, starting in the next few weeks. So James, next slide. So one of the things that we saw in the last few years is that students really struggle to explain or even describe spatial patterns. Many students are able to tell us what, but not where. And some responses have misidentified map directions, giving us the wrong directions, east or west, Eastern Europe versus Western Europe, for example, or would fail to describe what some of those patterns were. We also noticed that many students were not able to identify the major world regions correctly. And so one of my suggestions to you all as you're beginning to put the whole course together and you're beginning to think about understanding the CED is to build in for every one of your units and your quizzes and your assessments, ways to really improve student interpretation of maps, right? Get them to look at the legends, get them to understand what they're looking at when they are looking at a map. Geographers and maps are kind of hand in hand. It's the tools that we use, but you also have to really hone those map interpretation skills. Next slide. Another area for student improvement is the concept of scale of analysis. So you've heard Celeste mention it and Allison as well. Scale of analysis is not the same thing as a map scale. And I just want to draw your attention to one of the ways that I teach my own students at George Washington University about scale of analysis. I give them the image of the Russian nesting dolls. And I say, the big doll is the global picture. The next doll down in size is your major world regions like a sub-Saharan Africa, North America. The next doll down might be a country like the United States or a Malawi or an Afghanistan. The next doll down might be a city within that country like New York City. And then the smallest little dolls might be local neighborhoods. One of the things that geographers do that many other social sciences don't do is we are able to look at scale of analysis and go up and down the scale by looking at a particular phenomena. So take an example of fertility, which this map is showing you, a map of fertility. You can see it's very uneven. There are some areas with still relatively high rates of fertility, and areas, countries, and regions where it's low. And so even wanting to kind of magnify that, we can actually see that within some countries, you're going to have different levels of fertility, right? So when we look at scale of analysis, this is really referring to the level at which the data is aggregated. So you're looking at a world map. This is not a global scale of analysis. This is a national scale because you've got data at the country level. So that's a really important concept to understand. One of the things that we found was that students really didn't read the prompt very carefully. And so, some of our questions, some of the parts of our FRQs will have scale of analysis, and it might switch. It might talk to, the question might be something about how access to fertility in one country might affect regional fertility levels. And so understanding that a question might move through different scales is really important for students to be able to describe or explain. Next slide, James. Another area is, remember we introduced the idea that there are the major task verbs of explain, but actually there are many different explains. There's explain a reason, explain how, explain why, and then there are two really important explains that are really higher level thinking for your students. And one is explain the limitations of data, graphs, satellite images, right? And so the example that I've given you here is coming from an FRQ. Explain one limitation of the table to the right, shown in measuring a country's level of gender equality, right? So if your students understand what the Human Development Index measures, they would also understand that it doesn't measure gender variables. And so simply a measurement of Human Development Index is not going to necessarily reveal a country's level of gender equality. So one of our tips for you is, once your students have learned those key concepts, those models and those theories, make sure, now this is at the bottom of those skill sets, right? It's the higher level advanced thinking. Make sure they also understand what those concepts and models and theories don't do a very good job of, or can't do a good job of providing information or context for. Next slide. And finally, probably the most rigorous question that we ask on our exam, and again, explain the limitation and explain the degree to which. Those are two different explains, but they're really kind of on any FRQ, they're going to separate the students that score 4s and 5s from those that don't. Explain the degree to which is a question that we're seeing on a lot of our FRQs. And my suggestion to you is, when a student sees the phrase explain the degree to which ... that the first thing that they want to do is to be able to include an indication of that degree. So this is a type of response that actually has two things that must be involved in a response that will earn a point. One is that they have to indicate the degree to which. So they either have to say it has a high degree, a no degree, a low degree, somewhat. They have to give us some sort of qualifying adjective there. And then the second part of that answer or that response must indicate some level of support with an explanation, right? So on the right, one example of an FRQ with explain the degree to which is explain the degree to which access to specialized women's health care in more developed countries is likely to affect a country's total fertility rate. The really challenging thing about the explain degree to which is there can be different correct answers as long as they're well supported. A student can earn a point. So for example, one acceptable response would be to say, if women have access to specialized healthcare, it can increase a country's total fertility rate to a high degree through fertility treatments. But another way a student response could still earn a point is to talk about it as a low level of of degree. If women cannot afford specialized healthcare, access to this care will have little impact on a country's total fertility. So as you're thinking about introducing the task verbs, remember that we want your students to really be able to explain. And one of the weaknesses that we've seen in the explanations is that they're just not giving us enough supporting evidence. Next slide. So what can you practice this year with your students? Definitely interpreting maps, interpreting information at multiple scales, and answering questions at the proper scale of analysis. Please make sure to advise your students, do not panic if you see words they don't fully recall or understand, because it can often get the context behind what's being asked of them if they can, just kind of give themselves a sense of reading through the question maybe another time or two. Teach students to critique the models and the theories and the processes even more frequently than you might think, right? What value is the model in understanding a process? What can it not do? So we really want to, teach them about these models, but then teach them the reality that models don't always provide information in particular contexts. Make sure you use and use over and over again geographic vocabulary, scale of analysis, spatial patterns, spatial distribution, and get students used to it in both the written and spoken language. And finally, work with your students to find those limitations of visual data like satellite images. Like, what can you see with the satellite image? What can you not see? What can you infer? What can you not infer from what you're looking at, right? So I think we're gonna stop there. And I know we've gone a little bit over our time, but if you have any questions and you wanna post those in our Q&A, we can go ahead and start answering some of them. And I'll turn it back over to Courtney.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to have all our panelists come back on with their video. As you're thinking about your questions, I just want to point out that I've posted a link to an evaluation form. We really appreciate your feedback, and we're happy to sign off on an hour of professional development credit for you. If you're able to fill out that form, we'll have your information to send that certificate to. So thanks in advance for filling out the evaluation. We do have a question that has come in. How do I figure out course pacing? How much time should I spend on each unit within the course and exam description? Do any of our panelists want to tackle this question about pacing?
I can take that one.
Great, thanks.
So I would encourage you, just as the course and exam description originally was planned through like a backward design, to think about that in terms of even your dates versus even the overall concept. So of course our years may end and start at different times, but the AP test is the same. And so starting with that date, allowing perhaps a few days for review. And then of course we're going to have interruptions. That's pretty much a guarantee, right? So giving yourself a few days for different margins of errors, depending on your state, your number of days of state testing and timing of that might vary significantly. And then count up how many instructional days you have remaining once you look at all of that. And so with those with those remaining days, then I would divide them roughly equally across the 7 units. Now you might say, wait a second. When I look at the course and exam description, I hope you say this, when I look at the course and exam description, I see that unit 1 is weighted less. And most of us that are teaching this course teach it to freshmen. And so especially if that is the case for you, I find that while unit 1 content is awarded less time, that I also need to teach my students how to be effective advanced placement students and some basic study skills, and how to read a college level textbook, how to approach challenging test questions, those sorts of things. And so as a result, I keep my unit time-wise pretty equal. You also will find within the course and exam description some recommendations on pacing that you can go with as well. But I'd first start with my calendar All right, mark out days that I know are going to be interrupted, and then a few extras because there will be more interruptions, and then divide by 7 as a starting point.
Wonderful. Thank you, Allison. And we did have a question come in as well. Thank you, Lynette. The question is about scale of analysis. Lisa, I think this was about one of your slides talking about the difference between national and urban. So I'll let you take this question.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was me putting 2 different questions together as a generic question, and I did mess up. But so I would just say that the map I was showing you was national scale. And we also had a scale of analysis question on another FRQ that was at the urban scale. And you know, students were oftentimes not understanding that the question was moving from a national to an urban scale. And so they kept talking about the country rather than the city that was shown on the map. So I apologize for confusing you even more. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We do have another question. What advice would you give to a new teacher of this course who is concerned as to how to grade the assessments without a strong understanding of the skills and content? Great question.
I'll go ahead and try and tackle it, if that's okay. So this is a great question. You know, you know more than you think you do, but I would really use AP Classroom as much as possible. You know, I would use AP Classroom as much as possible. I would encourage students to use AP Daily. I would use the chief reader notes with the scoring guidelines that are on College Board. And I would, you know, we've all gotten tired of this word for the past year and a half, but I would give yourself grace. Like you cannot understand what's expected of students your very first year on the exam, your very first year teaching as far as the writing goes. But the more that students practice writing and the more that they practice looking at scoring guidelines, which the FRQs were just great this year. They're incredibly difficult to write. I try to do it myself and they're really hard to write. There's like basically one from each unit. So if your students can, you know, work with those in class and look at the scored papers and just get used to seeing the comments that we readers have made, you know, in the course of the reading, then I mean, you'll be doing everything that you can reasonably be expected to do. You just have to be easy on yourself and know that you're just not going to know it all the first year, and that's okay. You will still have students who are successful on the exam.
Thanks so much, Laura. I do want to be conscious of everyone's time and just thank everyone for staying a bit later. We have 2 more questions that we'll get through and then we'll wrap things up. As you all know and have heard, you can continue to ask questions on the Facebook group. There is a great community of teachers who are going to be happy to answer those questions for you even after this evening. So just quickly, if anyone wants to talk about how do you present your information to your students and how do you link different EKs in one session? And Dr. Swanson, I think this might be a great one for you, given your focus on pedagogy and teaching.
I'm sorry, I was looking at some of the other questions and answers. Are you talking about the question on how to teach the different EKs?
Yes, the question from Frederic.
Perfect. Frankly, and it is okay to teach more than one essential knowledge within a lesson. And you will be doing that a lot, actually. And you're going to be combining a lot of these. And that's the power of this course, actually, is the ability to connect population with urbanization, to connect agriculture with globalization and so on. And by connecting all of those, you are connecting different essential knowledge within this course. So it is perfectly acceptable to do that. And you can do that in a variety of different formats. You can do that in constructivistic type of ways with students, where students are building upon this knowledge. You can do it with direct instruction type of ways. Either way, I would just recommend you kind of mix it up a little bit in some of your different ways of presenting some of these. But oftentimes, and I know, especially new teachers, you kind of fall back on the direct instruction type, but it's okay to have students explore and to work through this. And that's where I think some of these case studies that were talked about earlier really kind of come into play for this, and you can have a lot of fun with that as well. So I hope you don't get caught up on all of this. And again, just the key to this course is making these connections with students and making geography come alive for them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And our final question from Courtney Thompson. She is being thrown into teaching this course a month into the school year. So sorry to hear that. But with no idea what the students have done already, what should be her first priority? And Celeste, if you wouldn't mind taking this question, I think you'd be great to answer this one.
Well, I'm sorry that you're getting thrown into it, but I don't think you'll be sorry by the end of the year. I think you'll be probably saying thank you for throwing it at me. Just to give you a little information, I was the last teacher in my department that they came to ask me to teach it, and no one wanted to teach it, and I wanted to teach it. And I was so happy, and now they're all jealous that I get to teach it. So it's a blessing in disguise, as I like to say. So take a deep breath. But I don't know what your age of your students. A lot of teachers teach ninth graders. Some teach upper classmen, and I think just assume that they don't know much. But give yourself some credit. You probably know more than what you realize. You've probably seen, things that you're teaching in other courses, things that you've observed, the travel that you have done. One of the things that I brought in a lot of experience from I was not a teacher in my former career. And so when I was really nervous teaching this course, and after I got done teaching it, I was like, wow, this is everything I did in my past career. And I just didn't realize I was doing geography. Now I have concepts and models, and now I understand what I was doing. So my thing is that assume that they don't know very much. Get them excited. Get yourself excited. One of the things that I love to show in the first few days of class, because my students will go, "What is human geography?" I love to show the geospatial revolution videos, because it kind of shows how geography is being used in the real world. And it's a very uplifting, inspirational, and I think it's, I show students like, look at this, they're using this to track disease, and look at this, they're using this to look at growing populations in urban areas. Look at this, and we're going to be talking about this. And so it kind of gives them a preview of what they're going to learn about. And it gets the students invested. And I think that should be your priority. And then just start looking at your CED and rolling up your sleeves and just start going through things. And like I said, the scale, make sure your scale analysis, you really hit that hard in the early part of your course, because you're going to be using that all throughout the year, over and over and over again. And if students can master that in the beginning, then they're going to be in really great shape throughout the rest of the year. So good luck, and just realize that you are the luckiest teacher that has to teach us in a month. And you're going to think you actually hit the jackpot this year. So good luck, and take a deep breath. You know more than what you give yourself credit.
Wonderful. Thank you, Celeste. I think that's a perfect note to end on. All of you attendees in the audience, you know more than maybe you think you do. You're going to be fantastic this year, and we're so excited to see you thrive in this course. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this community, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.